I woke up feeling great. The birds are in the trees. They're singing me a melody. La 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 la, fuck the police. My head is on straight. My heart is in peace. My soul is incredibly ready to change history. It's a good day to fight the system. To fight the system. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good, good, good day. We're never gonna stop. We're gonna make it count. When one of us is tired out, the other one will hold it down. We're gonna spread the love. We're gonna spread it around. We're all over the city now, and way down in the underground. Come on. To fight the system. To fight the system. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good day to fight the system. To fight the system. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good, to fight the system. To fight the system. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good, good, good day. It's a good day to fight the system. To fight the system. It's a good, good day. It's a good, good day.
Education shifts power. We demand a power shift. We're no longer waiting for you to notice us. This is our final request. Fund girls' education, challenge gender norms, co-create with us. Our lives depend on this. Shift the power.
Asqui qua sanamas ni tampawag, natasui shirente mashatashan Harris. Hello, my friends. My name is Shirente. I am 20 years old and a citizen of the Narragansett Indian tribe. I am also Niantic, the indigenous people of Rhode Island, and I am so honored and thankful to have been asked to give a land acknowledgement today as we all gather. I think it's important that we always remember the stories of our indigenous people wherever we are across the globe, because when I think of this place where I am today, and I think of my ancestors, you cannot have American history without indigenous history. The two are inseparable, and we must come to task and face the colonization, that has occurred across the globe in order to recognize how Indigenous people today continue to face oppressions. For the history of our past is tied to our present. And when I think of the 215 that have unfortunately been found, I want to honor their spirits, and I think to our intergenerational trauma, and that it is in the hands of our young people to break us free from this generational curse of this trauma. Our young people being born into worlds that are not of our own design must feel empowered to shake things up and to heal us and return us back to the old ways. So I thank you all for the important work that you're doing. And I would like to say, Namanatuman napiyaman inging kisakwa, nash pinachikwanai tahanoanash, katapatatamesh katantua uchiwami numamani tank natang suak ninash. And what I just said was, Great Spirit, our collective spirit, we gather together and come unto you today with our quiet hearts. And we thank you, our beautiful creation all around us, for all of our beloved relations. And let it be so. As we continue our work today and tomorrow, let us remember the voices of our Indigenous people wherever we are. As I continue to champion the voice of my people, the Nahagansak of Rhode Island. Katabatanamu, thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much, Sharante, for this powerful opening. We stand in solidarity with our Indigenous peoples of the world, especially of the Americas. May we remember Sharante's words throughout our time here together today and throughout our work. I am Dennis from Guyana.
And I'm Yande from Zambia.
We are from Transform Education, a coalition of feminist youth-led organizations who've come together to organize this event. We're all co-organizers, and we're doing this with the support of UNGAI, along with the UN Youth Envoy's Office, Restless Development, SIGEN, GCE Youth Constituency, and our allies in the G7 Education Working Group. Education shifts power by ensuring every young person is empowered to achieve their fullest potential. Yet, 130 million girls worldwide are still deprived of their right to an education. And 20 million of them, and even more, may not be able to return to school after COVID-19. School-related gender-based violence still puts the healthy development of children and youth at risk. Girls are still denied access to classrooms worldwide. Queer students are still being marginalized. Oppression keeps our children out of school. We are here today in solidarity with them. We are here today because we've had enough. We're tired of it. Today, we're demanding change. We're demanding action. We're demanding a power shift. That's why we're all here. So I want you guys to hold your signs up for me. We demand a power shift. And I'll hand you over to Yande. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. In 5 days, world leaders are meeting at the G7 summit. Leaders from Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, the US, the EU, Australia, India, South Korea, and South Africa are coming together to discuss economic policies. World leaders are discussing our future. We are young feminist voices from all over the world, and we demand concrete action on gender equality and education by G7 governments. They say they will build back better from COVID-19. We say, show us. They say they will create a greener, more prosperous future. And we say, yet again, show us. Show us a gender transformative education system. Show us education that is accessible to everyone, and show us an education that centers gender equality and climate justice. Today, we demand that leaders make gender transformative education a priority. Today, we demand that leaders listen to youth and recognize us as the experts that we are. And today, we're holding them accountable. We have the knowledge, we have the numbers, and we have the lived experience. Now it's time to have our voices heard. Are you with us? If you are, let me see your signs to the screen. We welcome Rantia, our Palestinian sister from the Arab Campaign for Education. So let's start shifting the power with solidarity. Rantia, take the stage.
Forced ethnic displacement, ethnic cleansing, genocide, political imprisonment, kidnapping of girls and children, ecosystems collapsing, systemic racism, gender inequality, and denying the right for education to girls. This is not a history lesson. This is a reality check. This is our reality, the reality of the people who will be speaking to you today. Only last week, the remains of 215 Indigenous children have been found under a residential school in Canada. Only last month, 65 children in Gaza have been murdered, some found under the rubble with their holiday clothes on. Until this moment, tens are still missing under the rubble. I want to start saying by saying, let history not repeat itself. But the reality is that history has been nothing but a cycle of an oppressive system, marginalizing the already marginalized. History has been nothing but horrendous to us, in which our rights were absent, our voices are silenced, and our pain is continually diminished. I can only wonder how many more graves are hidden under these stolen lands. How many voices have been silent under oppressive systems? How many children have we lost? Driven by this pain, a flame of hope has been planted in our souls, a hope for a better future that will start with our children and through their education. And that's why we are here today, to fight for the education of our future, for our future leaders, to ask you to be a part of this change we're fighting for, to be the voices for the voiceless. Silence in the face of injustice produces the normalization of oppression. This has such a tremendous impact on human psyche and mental health, causing many to suffer in silence, in the belief that it's not the right time to voice out their pain. Mental health services should not be a privilege, but rather included in our curriculums so it can be accessible to all. It's a protection tool for our children. Now imagine with me how it is for girls who are under another oppressive and abusive system called the patriarchy. Many who are being kidnapped as we speak, many who are victims of domestic violence, many who are denied from their education. So today, when we speak of the importance of education for girls, we are not only speaking of writing and reading, we are speaking of a protection tool, a safe space, a haven. That's what education is all about. A space that can protect and arm our children and girls from all this violence around us. For education is not a human right by its own. It's the forefront of all the rights we are fighting for. It is the beginning. Human rights are intersected and interconnected, and that's why today we want to voice out our solidarity with our sisters and brothers around the world, from Palestine to all the Arab region, to Colombia, to Myanmar. We stand in solidarity with youth taking the street to fight for their freedom. We stand in solidarity with all the people fighting repressive governments. We stand in solidarity with our sisters and daughters and their fight for equality. We stand in solidarity with our LGBTQ community that is still fighting for recognition and inclusivity. We are in solidarity with our Black community around the world that is still fighting to end racism. We stand together because all of you are fighting for all of us. And we are all fighting for you. We are one, and no one is free until all of us are free. نحن الكل, نحن واحد. Somos todo, somos uno. We are all, we are one. And now I share this space to my Argentinian brother, Felipe, from Transform Education, hosted by UNGEI.
Todos los que estamos acá sabemos la impotencia que se puede sentir siendo activistas. Sobre todo cuando nos damos cuenta que la gente que toma las decisiones no nos escucha o simplemente nos tokeniza y nos usa para decir que escuchan a los jóvenes. Creo que todos nos hemos preguntado si de verdad hacemos la diferencia o si sería lo mismo no hacer nada. Les quiero contar la historia de las Madres de Plaza de Mayo en Argentina. y mostrarles que hasta en los contextos más difíciles el cambio está en nuestras manos. En las décadas de los 70 y los 80, Latinoamérica fue en buena parte azotada por terribles dictaduras. Particularmente la de mi país, Argentina, se caracterizó por la censura y por la desaparición de personas por sus pensamientos políticos. 30.000 personas fueron desaparecidas en total. En ese contexto fue en el que las madres de Plaza de Mayo surgieron. No eran políticas, no pertenecían a ningún partido, eran madres que habían perdido a sus hijos en una venganza de la que nada tenían que ver. Empezaron a reunirse, empezaron a marchar en la Plaza de Gobierno, e incluso cuando la dictadura, asustada por su valentía, desapareció algunas de sus líderes, siguieron protestando, y no pararon nunca. Su activismo, inédito en la lucha por los derechos humanos, llevó a la Argentina a ser el único país del mundo que juzgó y encarceló de por vida a los líderes de las Fuerzas Armadas que dirigieron la tortura de personas por sus pensamientos políticos. Crearon una de las frases más icónicas de la política argentina: memoria, verdad y justicia. Fundaron una facultad en la que yo hoy estudio historia con un enfoque en los derechos humanos. Eran mujeres, en una época en la que serlo te impedía hacer política, que se enfrentaron a las armas sin armas, con palabras, y ganaron. Si ellas siguieron protestando ante la desaparición de sus compañeras y las amenazas constantes del gobierno, y aún así no pararon y consiguieron un cambio, nosotros también lo vamos a hacer. Es nuestro momento de decirle al mundo que estamos cansados de que nos callen. Hoy más que nunca es nuestro momento de gritar, y vamos a gritar tan fuerte que no nos van a poder ignorar más. Tomar las riendas de nuestro futuro está en nuestras manos. La lucha está en nuestras manos. El cambio está en nuestras manos. Y esta vez vamos a ganar. Acuérdense, la educación desafía el poder y ahora el poder está en nuestras manos. We will make a change. This is our moment to tell the world that we're done being quiet. We want to yell, and we will yell so loud that they won't be able to ignore us anymore. Taking the front seat for our future is in our hands. The fight is in our hands. The change is in our hands. And this time, we will win. Because remember, education shifts power, and the power is now in our hands. From Argentina, I demand a gender transformative education with my sister Dola in Bangladesh. Dola is a campaigner that works to end child marriage with World Vision. Handing over the power to you, Dola.
I will give an educated nation. That's what they say. My mother wanted to be a banker, but she did not get chance. Married at an early age, she did not get chance to complete her studies, to follow her dreams. Millions of girls and women wanted to be a banker, a doctor, a scientist, but did not get chance. Today, girls around the world are not given a chance. Between 2018 to 2019, we at the National Child Forum stopped 600 child marriages in Bangladesh. But there were even more that we did not get to prevent, a number hidden in darkness that keeps increasing when girls do not go to school. To build a world free from social norms, a violence-free world, a child marriage-free world, we need to ensure girls' education. Let us be the future mothers of this world, who manage to be the future bankers, doctors, and scientists of this world. Let us live in the brightest world. 88,000 children are part of National Child Forum in Bangladesh. We have been fighting for children's rights and protection. Together, we will continue to do so. We have been mobilizing together because we know that education shapes our lives. We ask leaders to realize this too. We demand that leaders make our education as a priority. So we don't want to grow up to those ones who did not have chance. From Bangladesh, I hand over the power to Jacob, my fellow activist in Australia. Jacob is a queer human rights advocate. Thank you.
From NAM, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I stand today, to the Bunurong Bunwurrung and the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nations, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge that these lands too were never ceded, and that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. 31 years ago, the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from its list of disorders. In 2019, the WHO declassified being transgender as a mental disorder. Today, we have marriage equality, in several countries. We have LGBTIQA plus parents, families, colleagues, and friends. But still, there are 71 countries where we are illegal. 11 jurisdictions allow for the death penalty against LGBTQ plus people, including honor killings of young LGBTQ plus people for our known or assumed sexuality or gender identity. All LGBTIQA plus people deserve to be safe, to be legal, to be protected, and this includes our young LGBTIQA plus kids in schools. Schools are one of the most unsafe places for LGBTIQA plus youth around the world. Despite the tenacity, the bravery, and audaciousness of young LGBTIQA plus people and their school-aged allies, these young people are more likely to be bullied, to be harassed, and experience school-related gender-based violence compared to their heterosexual and cisgender counterparts. This continuous violence often leads to LGBTIQA plus youth dropping out of school, and at worst, it results in them taking their own lives, sometimes at ages as young as 9 or 10. We demand that the G7 remember that LGBTIQA plus children matter just as much as any other young person. They deserve a quality education. They deserve to be protected. They deserve to play sports. They deserve to be alive. They deserve to be here so that they too can be happy and successful adults with their own families, their own careers, passions, and become our future leaders. So before you debate about whether LGBTIQA plus kids exist or not, or whether they deserve to be at school, remember today that a child is listening to you. So please tell them that they deserve to be here. From Australia, I shift the power to Mia in Germany to demand to Chancellor Merkel that the power shift. Mia is in the leadership team of Talkback. Mia, to you.
Thank you, Jacob. Hi, mein Name ist Mia, ich benutze genderneutrale und Sie-Pronomen, bin 17 Jahre alt und komme aus Berlin, Deutschland. Ich bin hier, um Kanzlerin Merkel stellvertretend aufzufordern, in eine Bildung mit dem Fokus auf Gleichberechtigung der Geschlechter zu investieren. Seit ich klein bin, hatte ich das Privileg, Zugang zu kostenloser Bildung zu haben. Ein ganz zentraler Grundsatz im deutschen Schulsystem ist dabei die Chancengleichheit. Je älter ich wurde, desto mehr erkannte ich jedoch, wie weit dieser Grundsatz von der Realität entfernt liegt. Mir wurde klar, für echte Chancengleichheit muss es einen Wandel von Machtverhältnissen in der gesamten Gesellschaft geben. Wir müssen unsere von Rassismus, Patriarchat und Kolonialismus geprägte Sozialisierung hinterfragen. Und dafür gibt es wohl keinen besseren Ort als die Schule. Doch dieser Ort kann auch gefährlich sein. Durch meine Aktivität bei Talkback, einer internationalen, von jungen Menschen geführten Organisation, die gegen sexualisierte Gewalt vor allem auf der Straße vorgeht, hörte ich so oft Geschichten von übergriffigem Verhalten gegen vor allem marginalisierte Individuen in der Schule. Ich und andere Aktivistis gehen deshalb an Schulen und leisten Präventionsarbeit, empowern und klären auf. Aber ich frage mich immer wieder und wieder, warum wir als externe Organisation uns um diesen Inhalt kümmern müssen. Wie grandios wäre es, wenn einfach Teil des Curriculums wäre? Würde Konsens statt Abstinenz gelehrt werden? Wären queere Perspektiven ein Thema im Klassenzimmer? Die Schule und auf lange Sicht auch die Welt wären ein sichererer Ort für viele. Ich und viele andere Jugendliche wissen ganz genau, was wir im Curriculum wollen und brauchen. Denn für echte Chancengleichheit müssen alle Schülis im Curriculum repräsentiert sein, müssen alle Perspektiven gehört werden. Darum ist es Zeit, Jugendliche bei Bildungsfragen mit einzubinden. Denn eins haben wir wohl bewiesen, sei es mit Fridays for Future oder diesem internationalen Protest. Wir sind bereit, etwas zu verändern. Wir haben eine Stimme, eine Perspektive, die wir immer weiter herausbrüllen, bis sie uns zuhören. Bis es Chancengleichheit gibt. Und zwar nicht nur in den G7, sondern auf der ganzen Welt. Vielen Dank. From Germany, I shift the power to Renata in Brazil. Renata is a climate justice and girls education advocate. She is the founder of Empoderar Clima. Standing in solidarity with you, Renata.
Thank you, Mia. Chegou a hora da mudança. Nós, a juventude global, já esperamos por tempo demais. As decisões sendo tomadas essa semana na cúpula do G7 dizem respeito ao nosso futuro. Não somente o nosso futuro de uma forma generalizada, mas a nossa existência. Nós não temos mais tempo. A crise climática está acontecendo agora, e a minha geração é a última que pode fazer alguma coisa sobre isso antes que seja tarde demais. Só tem um problema. Nós não temos um lugar na mesa de tomada de decisão para demandar que as escolas sejam mais inclusivas, seguras e responsivas à questão de gênero. Mas não se enganem, nós temos tudo que é preciso para ocupar esse espaço e contribuir para um planeta mais sustentável e justo. Nós temos o entusiasmo, a energia e o conhecimento. Mas, na maior parte das vezes, nós não temos o espaço para que a nossa voz seja ouvida. E, sinceramente, eu acho que é por isso que ainda não temos as soluções que nós precisamos. Sim, nós tivemos melhoras nas últimas décadas para a educação de meninas, mas essa evolução se deu de forma desigual em diferentes regiões do mundo. Em 2020, 90% das meninas estavam matriculadas na escola secundária na Europa e na Ásia Central, enquanto somente 24% se matricularam na África subsaariana. Não é coincidência que o continente africano e a região da América Latina, de onde eu sou, estão entre os mais afetados pela mudança climática, sem políticas interseccionais para mitigação e adaptação ao clima. O G7 concentra alguns dos países mais poderosos do mundo, mas eu pergunto a vocês, a juventude dos seus países tem acesso a esse poder na tomada de decisão? Se a resposta for não, é hora de mudar o poder. Power Shift. Com educação de qualidade para meninas, nós podemos melhorar as suas habilidades para ocupar empregos verdes e aumentar a sua resiliência à mudança do clima. A educação de meninas precisa ser uma força poderosa para atingir a justiça climática para todos. E, para isso, nós precisamos de lideranças jovens e feministas dialogando com o G7. Nós não queremos mais decisões feitas sobre nós, sem nós. Chegou a hora. Podemos contar com vocês?
Thank you all for such amazing presentations. Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
One more time, Yande. Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
We demand accessible, safer education that centers around gender equality, climate justice for everyone. Remember that the only way we can get this is if governments put down the funds to education. We need full financial support to address the needs of all elements of the 5-10-25 plan, inclusively and equitably. Youth are all about you. We are all about youth leadership. Fund us to co-create. Fund us to co-lead. Put your money where your mouth is. World leaders, let's see what's going to happen now after this power shift. Let me see your signs one more time, guys. We demand a power shift.
G7 leaders, do you hear us? Do you hear us? We will hold you accountable. We will raise our voices. Silence is simply not an option. Now let's listen to our sister poets. They have some words for you. Let's see some signs. Alejandra and Asta, please take your power.
Es tiempo de cambiar. Enough is enough.
It is time for world leaders to listen, and this time they will listen.
I'm Alejandra from Mexico and the US.
And I'm Asta from India. We wrote this with Karima from Nigeria and Findu from Malawi.
While we're poets from different corners of the globe, we are voicing the demands of all of us.
This time, let's make them listen.
Asari.
Awipi.
Echitenje.
Han Adire.
Funny. How in spite of all your borders and our differences, the disturbances of injustice have brought our voices together, and this time you will listen to the voices of girls scattered across oceans and sands, standing once again with the same demands. Shiksha.
Educación.
Mapunziro. Eko.
Education shifts power.
But are you listening?
Dear world leaders, our final open letter, some more voices with demands. The opportunity to take action is right here in your hands. This is for the girls seeking to lead, innovate, and change. Strange how your silence has stretched far too long. We demand safe and inclusive schools now.
This
is for the girls who are fighting for the life of the planet. But climate justice can be a solo journey, can it? Yeah, this is the voice of the 20 million girls we may never return to school. Your inaction is a news, pulling tighter with each classroom you defund and diffuse. The ash of abuse, rising up to haunt the future. What delight sinking?
Are you listening?
As you know, due to the pandemic, 1.6 billion children have been displaced from school. The rule isn't that mere survival is a safe and healthy life. After over a year of disrupted education, our girls deserve to truly thrive. And we refuse to stand silently on the sidelines to watch decades of progress on girls' rights and education be undone. It is time to empower. Education shifts power.
But are you listening?
You must prioritize investing in girls' education, because failing to do so is a grave injustice, a disservice, not merely to a segment of the population, but to entire nations and future generations when you effectively shackle our skills and abilities. But we've seen enough of silent, sugar-coated revolution.
An endless list of reasons for why hands on chalkboard are now replaced with fists, demanding a future built by all of us.
A future with an education system and curriculum that centers social and climate justice, that builds on the foundation of gender equality.
Millions of voices, our voices, asking you again and again, ¿nos están escuchando?
Are you listening? Education shifts power when schools are safe and inclusive.
Education transforms ideas, systems, and norms.
Saying no to boys will be boys.
And ushering in accountability and reform.
You cannot run from the math, the truth,
the ticking time bomb that is our youth.
You cannot pretend that we are invisible and insignificant when so many stars count on us for their birth, when there is work to be done to save the earth.
When it is abundantly clear that our education is of worth, it is time to empower.
Education shifts power.
But are you listening?
We don't want any more empty promises.
We don't want you to shift the blame. We don't want bits and pieces.
We demand real change
with actions and policies.
Education for every girl is important. Education has the power to transform harmful gender norms and empower girls. Education shifts power by advancing gender equality and climate justice.
Dear what leader?
Our final open letter.
Another set of voices on fire with demands here. This, we argue, is another chance to redeem all the dreams you are yet to fund.
You must act now.
We urge you to commit, address the annual $200 billion shortfall, and invest in education that shifts power.
Dear what leaders?
Dear world leaders.
Dear world leaders.
Dear world leaders, we dare you
to step up and lead.
We dare you to shift power through education.
Are you really listening?
Shiksha.
Educación.
Mapunziro.
Eko.
Education.
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 Shifts power.
Education 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 shifts power by making sure that young people are not only given a seat at the table, but also are taking an active role in co-creating, co-leading, and driving action and accountability for gender equality and education everywhere in the community.
Girls' education transforms communities. That's why we need governments to step up and fund GPE.
The more inclusive the education, the more gender just, peaceful, and sustainable world can be created.
Ending gender-based violence and expanding access to comprehensive sexuality education shifts power by giving young people like me the information we need to make decisions on our own.
Inclusive curricula shift the power, enabling all young people to engage with learning materials and understand the relevance to their experiences, regardless of gender, sexuality, disability, or race.
We demand
a power shift.
It's been ages that we are fighting for different causes. The right to education, access to employment, gender equality, inclusion, accessibility of people with disabilities. We are fighting against all sorts of discrimination. Today, it's time to make a greater commitment and take concrete actions against social inequalities. We no longer want decisions made about us, without us. Governments have to stand for youth, stand in solidarity with us, and stand up so we can take a seat at the table. It's time to have our voice heard, to create a resilient education system that works for us. Let us work together and build a more peaceful, sustainable, fair, and just world.
Thank you so much for those inspiring videos. Education truly does shift power. I will now shift the power to Sienna in the United Kingdom. Sienna is an autism advocate, anti-bullying campaigner, and SDG young leader. Standing in solidarity with you, Sienna, please take the floor.
Thank you. Inclusive education shifts power by breaking down the barriers to opportunity. Education is the key to opening the door to a better life. It's also the force through which to bring about acceptance, inclusion, and equality. Providing equal access to education gives voices to the disadvantaged, disenfranchised, and defenseless. As someone who is autistic and has learning disabilities, I am one of the 20% of students worldwide whose educational needs are often ignored. Although neurodivergent students need the most support, our education is frequently overlooked and neglected. In the UK, teachers do not receive any training on identifying, teaching, and supporting students with neurological differences, such as dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. About 50% of students who are permanently excluded from school in the UK have a learning disability. These students are often excluded for behaviours that form the basis of their disability, which is against the law. In the UK, over 2,400 students with disabilities do not have a school place and are forced into being home educated, often for years. The lack of inclusive education and discriminatory practices have far-reaching consequences, including forcing many parents to give up their jobs. In May 2018, I helped organise national protests across the UK to raise awareness of the special educational needs and disability crisis. I handed a petition to 10 Downing Street demanding more funding and support for neurodivergent students. However, little has changed. The pandemic has exacerbated the inequality in access to education by disproportionately impacting disabled students. Girls with disabilities are being left further and further behind. The global gender inequality in education must be addressed if we are to prevent disabled girls from being sentenced to a life of poverty and dependency. Since inclusive education is the mechanism through which we can create an equal society where every person is valued, our politicians can no longer be allowed to ignore the education and the human rights of disabled students.
Thank you, Sienna. Thank you very much. Guys, I want you guys who can unmute yourselves, get your signs quickly, get your signs quickly. When I say, are you guys unmuted? Let me hear you. Mic test, let me hear you guys. Hey, when I say education shifts power, you say we demand a power shift. Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Hey, I think the world leaders didn't hear us one last time, and I want you guys to scream this time, right? Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Awesome. You guys look beautiful. I'll hand you guys over to Yandi right now.
Thank you so much, Dennis. We demand a power shift. We young activists in solidarity with our allies want the power shift, recognizing that investing in girls' education is key to building back equal and a just global COVID-19 recovery. We demand the UK government reverse aid cuts to girls' education. We also demand that all G7 leaders and the leaders of invited countries prioritize funding girls' education. We demand that governments prioritize safe, gender-responsive, and inclusive schools. We demand that governments acknowledge the significance of girls' education to propel climate justice and mainstream quality, gender transformative climate education across curricula. We demand that governments put in place an accountability framework to ensure that G7 commitments to girls' education are met, including the participation of girl and young feminist activists in key decision-making processes. Youth activists must receive adequate and flexible funding for their participation. Investing in our future is not optional. Now raise your signs if you want your voices to be heard. I want to see you waving them and screaming, demanding the power to shift. Now, let's do this. In a protest on the ground, we would make so much noise that they could hear us from miles away. And now we're going to do it, but on Twitter. All of us, all thousands of us, we're going to do a collective tweet out. Do you have your Twitters ready? Put in the chat if you have your Twitter ready. In the chat box, you will see a tweet. And when we say go, we go and we tweet together. So make sure you tag decision makers and use the hashtag education shifts power and hashtag G7. The tweet that we will be tweeting is fund education that centers gender equality and climate justice and partner with youth, to G7 leaders with the hashtag education shifts power and hashtag G7. I want you to put your signs once more because we're demanding the power to shift. Get your Twitter accounts ready and tweet in 3, 2, 1. Education shifts power. Let's get tweeting. Education shifts power indeed. I want us to chant the logo. When I say education shifts power, you say we demand a power shift. So let's unmute our mics one more time. Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Said education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
The G7 leaders are not listening. Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Woo! Education shifts power.
We demand a power shift.
Now that we have tweeted and we have chanted that education shifts power, I'm going to pass it on to Ashley to indeed take up the power and demand a power shift. Ashley, please take the floor.
Education shifts power because it places the choice, freedom, and the understanding in the hands of those most vulnerable. Informed people can make informed choices, choices that give them control over their lives and well-beings. Education shifts power by giving us the tools and resources needed to create meaningful change and impact to improve the lives of ourselves and others. Education turns us into experts, allowing us to have the knowledge to hold those in power accountable for their actions and inactions. We have to keep this conversation going. Beyond the just today, these demands must stay at the forefront of our activism till we no longer have to beg. We are here to reclaim our space and our right to inclusive, gender transformative education. Receiving an education is our human right. But we face so many challenges that affect our access to education, such as inadequate funding, insufficient care for us, and other vulnerable populations, and of course, this pandemic. Education is power, and it is time we are given the tools and resources to ensure it. Elected officials are in service to us, the people. We must hold them accountable and demand better. So, write to your senators, to ministers, to members of parliament, district councils, anyone in authority who has a say in our lives. This is just the start. This week, tweet our demands to G7 leaders and hashtag Education Shifts Power. Join the TikTok campaign, and you can check it out at UN Youth Envoy or Education Shifts Power. Use your platforms to amplify these demands, because we must tap into the power of partnership, because together we are stronger. Here is an end to silos. We are taking back our power, claiming our space. We are here and they must listen. We demand a power shift.
Thank you, Ashley. That was so powerful. There are hundreds of us here right now, hundreds of us. If we can all just amplify each other's voices, I'm pretty sure our messages are gonna get heard. Education shifts power. We have come together today from all across the globe as one to demand a power shift, to demand that G7 leaders fund education that centers around gender equality and climate action and climate justice, to co-create with young feminists. No longer must you create things without us if it's going to be for us, right? We're here to create an accountability framework, one that holds you accountable, but one that also ensures that we are held accountable as young people as well. But this is all about you and what you can do for us, right? As one. Today, what we've shown is that education really does shift power. And today, we want to thank you, every single one of you, from whichever country you're joining us, all of you young feminist leaders and allies. We want to thank you for joining us, for demanding with us, and for screaming with us today. We want to ask you not to stop. As Ashley said, it doesn't just stop here. We want you to keep making noise until change happens. We thank the G7 Education Working Group for standing in solidarity with us, but we want to hold you accountable too, right? So as you continue to co-create with us and other youth feminist networks, please remember to do so in all of our diversity.
As Dennis said, thank you for attending this event. This power today will not stop. Our voices will not end in this Zoom room. We will email the G7 Sherpas our demands, report to them that we came together, that we're holding them to account, and we're not just tokens, we're not just a youth stunt, we are power. We are the co-leaders and we demand a power shift. Now I want to see you raise your signs and raise your fists for the very last time as we unmute ourselves and demand that education shifts power. So let's unmute ourselves and chant, education shifts power.
We demand the power shift.
Education shifts power.
We demand the power shift.
Education shifts power.
We demand the power shift.
The last time, education shifts power.
We demand the power shift.
La niña rara cantaba al respirar y no le importaba. La música era su vida, no se callaba. Su corazón latía al cantar y decidida dijo no me parará, no es fácil, no será fácil. Tantas veces quise parar, tirar el lápiz. Vas a brillar, una estrella, tú lo serás. Dijo una voz dentro de mí. Vuelo alto y sin rencor, así nunca paro, no, no. No importa dónde voy, solo soy como soy. A veces parto bien y me vuelvo a caer. Me dicen a dónde vas, pero yo tampoco lo sé. ¿Cómo vivir? Todavía yo no sé muy bien. De Curaçao voy para Cali, Londres a París. A dónde voy todos están puestos para el party. El mariachi, el mariachi, mariachi. Me voy de España para Holanda, después a Irlanda. Hasta Corea te canto donde te haga falta. El mariachi, el mariachi, el mariachi, el mariachi.